What have we learned in the NHL this week? Spoke Z is here to answer that exact question on today's episode of Locked On Wild.
You're Locked On Wild. Your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. And just a reminder, we are free and available wherever you feel like listening to podcasts. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we look at what we have learned throughout the week in the NHL. With Spoke Z, we talk a little Wild, as the Wild have been one of the better teams throughout the course of the Western Conference so far. So we'll see some of the things that we pulled from them as well. And looking ahead to what we can expect from a crazy weekend of NHL to come. My name is Seth Topol, host of Locked On Wild, veteran Minnesota sports content producer at the helm of a full season of Minnesota Wild content. Happy to be with you here today. And as we'll do throughout the course of the regular season, today is a What's on Tap with Spoked Z edition of Locked On Wild. Spoked, what is happening, my friend? Happy Friday.
Not much, just watching all of the hockey. Happy Friday. How are you? Thank you for having me.
I'm doing great. And as I mentioned, this is going to be, I think, a perfect week way for us to culminate the week. Just looking at some of the big things that happened throughout the week in the NHL. We'll talk Wild. We'll talk NHL at a larger glance. So a good way to get us going into the weekend. And I think we can start with the Minnesota Wild, who are sitting at 3-0, just like everybody expected. And maybe the craziest game of the last couple of seasons, especially, which is saying something, as the Wild beat the Winnipeg Jets 6-5 in overtime. And I think this is just a classic example of, you don't have to have your best stuff every night to be able to win hockey games. And the Wild had large stretches where they were giving Winnipeg pretty much everything they wanted. And then all of a sudden you look in the third period, they get the game tying goal. And then in overtime, they get the game winner. So let's just talk about the game a little bit to start. What did you think of the unbelievable OT winner for the Wild against the Jets?
Yeah, that rocked. I was doing another podcast during the game, so I had it up like I was doing the podcast like this, like looking up, so I didn't have any sound on. But like mid podcast, Foligno Superman punched, and I just started screaming. So I wonder how that sounded. But that game was bananas, and I don't know why anyone would have left that was there or just counted them out if they watched any of the games from last season. It's kind of like it's the sign of a good team that even on nights where there's stretches where they're good, there's stretches where they're way better than Winnipeg, but they're not scoring, and then there's stretches where they're just having really sloppy turnovers, playing terrible, playing bad hockey. Couple goals Cam Talbot probably wants back. But that's a team that knows they're good enough to never be out of the fight. And I mean, you see it on that last goal in overtime. Cam Talbot, who, again, he's given up, 5 goals at that point, comes up with that massive save, shorthanded, and they just go down the other end and score. So, again, even on a night that they really didn't have their best stuff for 60 minutes, they still pull it together. There's a lot of belief in that room. The leaders came to play, and they ended up winning the game in a crazy way. So, a lot to take from it, good and bad. But, I mean, at the end of the day, you're 3-0, so you'll take it and run.
Joel Eriksson Ek, the hat trick. Matt Zuccarello had 4 points. Kirill Kaprizov had 3 points himself. And I know it's early. It's 3 games in, and the first couple of games we were kind of looking at the top line saying, guys got to kind of start to get it going a little bit, and they obviously did. Is it safe to say that Joel Eriksson Ek is trending towards becoming that top line center, or do we still need to see a little bit more from him with Kaprizov and Zuccarello before we make that determination?
Well, I think he's a good enough player. I mean, he's elite defensively. Last year he put in 20 goals, and I said it before. None of the goals that he scored last season were like all that fluky or goals that he couldn't replicate. Is he a number one center in terms of like, you think about number one center like McKinnon or McDavid putting up 100 points? No, he's not going to do that, but he's going to give you 200 feet of elite hockey. So he's obviously good enough to play with someone like Kaprizov and play with Zuccarello. So on this team, he's absolutely your number one center, and he's good enough. League-wide, they'd probably say on a Stanley Cup winning team. Anywhere else, he's probably a 2, but it doesn't really, I don't know why people put so much thought into that, because it really just depends team by team. And I think on this team, he's more than good enough to be your number one center. And I mean, we've seen it so far. He just decided to score a hat trick. So I would not be shocked if he put up 20 again, maybe even more, especially if he's going to be playing with Zuccarello and Kaprizov when he scores half his goals from right in front of the net. So if there's one thing that both of those other players are good at, it's putting the puck right in front of the net, and he can finish. So I don't even think we've seen the best of him yet. I think he's still young and there's a lot to grow. Or there's a lot of room for him to grow. So I think he's absolutely at least trending. If you want to say the sample size still isn't big enough, it's been like 1.01 seasons. Not even last year, wasn't even a full year, but he's absolutely trending in that direction, I think.
Anything that we should be concerned about with the Wild through the first week of games? I mean, they have all been 1-goal wins. They've all been come from behind wins. Cam Talbot looked good in 2 of them, had a little bit of a rough go against Winnipeg, but anything really that has jumped off the page in like, yeah, this is something that we need to be worried about going forward?
I don't know. I mean, I think they're rolling 4 lines pretty well. I wonder at what point are we going to see a Rem Pitlick come in? But if you're going to like nitpick, I'd probably say a few of those mistakes in their own end from some of the defensemen, maybe. But I mean, it's early days, so it's hard to say one thing that really stands out more than anything else. I mean, we'll see what Kakinen looks like when he finally comes back into play. But I mean, like to me, when I watch, there's no like big red flag where it's like, you better fix this right now, or like you're not going to make the playoffs. Like I don't see anything there. They're kind of just picking up from where they left off last season, which is nice.
Tell you what, let's take our attention to the Western Conference in general. Just look at some of the teams that have really started off slow, some of the juggernauts as well. Safe to say the St. Louis Blues may be in that second category, but more to come with Spoked Z on our Friday edition of Locked On Wild after this. This fall, Built Bar wants to help you celebrate freedom of choice. Did you know Built Bar has an amazing lineup of delicious tasting flavors, including coconut, cherry barcia, raspberry mint brownie, double chocolate, salted caramel, strawberry orange, cookies and cream, and German chocolate. My favorite, for what it's worth, is raspberry, one of the go-to flavors in my opinion. And if you're not sure where you want to start, just grab a mixed box and you'll get 2 each of those delicious flavors. Not only are Built Bars amazing tasting, they are healthy as well. Each Built Bar contains 17 to 18 grams of protein, ranges in calories from 130 to 180, contains only 4 to 5 grams of sugar and only 4 to 5 grams of net carbs. Amazing tasting, amazingly healthy. What's not to like about a Built Bar? So head to Built.com and use the promo code LOCKED15 and you'll get 15% off of your order. Again, use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Continuing today's episode of Locked On Wild. Again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. Spoke Z joining the show as we take a look at what's on tap for the weekend. Looking at the Western Conference, and the St. Louis Blues off to a great start at 3-0. They have 15 goals in those 3 games, so safe to say the Blues are buzzing here to start the year. After a down year last year, was it just a matter of kind of everything going wrong for St. Louis to where now we're seeing the Blues team that we probably should have seen last year too?
I think they're somewhere in the middle. I think they're kind of catching teams at the right spot right now. I mean, Colorado, that first game, they had McKinnon out. They had a lot of players out. Then they go to Arizona, who is an absolute dumpster fire. And then they go to Vegas when they're down Pacioretty, Stone. I'm not sure if they had one or two other guys that were out. But right now, I think they're catching teams at the right time. But they also are looking really good. I mean, I think a lot of people had Jordan Kyrou pegged for a breakout year. And I want to say he's leading their team. Yeah, he's got 7 points through 3 games, and he looks unbelievable. Binnington's been solid for them. He's 3-0. And they're getting contributions from guys like they were last year with Justin Falk. David Perron continues just score. And I think he's shooting like 30% right now, but he still looks really good. So I think it's a combination of they shouldn't have been that bad last season, but they're also catching teams at really good times in Colorado and Vegas. And then again, Arizona's Arizona. So I want to see a little bit more from them if I'm going to decide if they're for real or not. But I mean, they're putting the puck in the back of the net, which doesn't matter who you're playing, that's still hard to do. So I think, yeah, they look good so far. We'll see if they can continue it. They're not going to go 82-0. But yeah, I think they look a little bit better than I thought they would, but I wonder if they are catching teams at that good time between injuries. And again, I just can't emphasize enough how bad Arizona is. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's and we'll talk about their counterpart for the worst team in the NHL, who somehow is just off to a crazy start to the year, the Buffalo Sabres. But continuing with the Western Conference, Colorado and Vegas both 1-2. Who's in more trouble between those two teams?
I'd probably say Vegas in terms of like personnel right now, because they already didn't have a number one center. Like, I love Chandler Stevenson. I think he's awesome. I love William Karlsson. I think he's awesome, but neither one of them are, like you said before about Joel Eriksson Ek. Like, they're not like that 1C guy. William Karlsson scored 40 in his first year in Vegas, but that was clearly an aberration. So I think between Stone and Pacioretty having pretty significant injuries, that puts them in a bind. And we'll see if Robin Lehner can come back and like figure it out, because he's not really had the strongest start so far and from the games that I watched. But at the same time, they're in that Pacific division. So it's like, it's not like they have a ton of ground to make up with all those teams anyways. And again, we're 3 games in, but I just look at Colorado. Their guys are back. Landeskog's, I think, done a suspension now. I think they're losing to Florida, but Florida's a wagon. So in terms of like competition, Colorado's obviously got more stiff competition in their division, but I think just from personnel standpoint, I think Vegas might be in a little bit of trouble, but they're good enough in that division to fight their way out of it.
In the Central Division, so obviously you got the Wild and the Blues at 3-0. Dallas is 2-2. Then you have Nashville and Colorado at 1-2. Winnipeg, Arizona, and Chicago are winless. Chicago with 4 games in, they are 0-3. And giving up goals right away. Like, it's almost as if as the opposing team comes onto the ice, the Blackhawks just hand them a goal. Like, here you go. We'll spot you one. How concerned should the Blackhawks be with their start to the season?
Very, because I mean, I think everyone saw it coming. Like, they had some good additions, and I don't think Seth Jones is as bad as everyone wants him to be. He's been really bad. But he's obviously not worth $9.5 million. He's not the number one defenseman that some people think he is, but he's been a complete nightmare for them. And it looks like that Vezina season from Fleury might have just been him playing behind a really good defense. He had a really good year, obviously, and contributed a lot. I'm not going to take that away from him, but behind the Chicago defense, he looks like he's in one a little bit. And I mean, up front, they're just not scoring a ton of goals. So I think they're in a lot of trouble. But if they thought they were going to make the playoffs, like, I don't know why anyone had them sneaking in. Like, they made additions, sure, but like, they're still not good. So I think they're in one.
Just looking at, the bottom feeders of the, what do we make? Actually, that's the way I wanted to go. What do we make of the Dallas Stars? I mean, they're 2-0, and I have no idea what to think of this team so far. Are they going to be good? Are they going to be bad? Somewhere in between? What do we think?
I think it's a classic Dallas Stars team that I don't believe in very much. I think I love Miro Heiskanen and I love their defense. We obviously know Suter. That was a good addition for them. But with Bonus as a head coach, he's a defensive-minded coach. They didn't really make any significant additions up front. Like they added Luke Glendening to win faceoffs and like kill penalties, but there's just not a ton of firepower behind the young guys. So like they really need a resurgence from Sagan and Ben and Radulov, and they need Guryanov to take off. They need Hintz to stay healthy and take off because he's trending up. But there's just not a ton of proven firepower beyond Jamie Benn and Tyler Sagan. And that's why that's why I don't have them in the playoffs. I just don't think they're going to score enough goals. And I don't even know what's going on with their goaltending. They have 4 goaltenders. They sent Ottinger, who was their best goalie last season, to the AHL to play games. They bring in Braden Holtby for I don't know why. Bishop's healthy, maybe he's not. He's on IR, but they said he's healthy. I don't even know what that means. And then you're relying on Anton Khudobin, who's 35 years old. So the defense in front of them should keep them in games, but if the goaltenders, all 4 of them, have a bad night and they're not scoring goals, and they're going to be in trouble. Like they looked like they played Boston the other night and lost, and they looked bad. Like for large stretches, there was just nothing going on for them for offense. So that's where I kind of doubt them, and that's why I don't have them in the playoffs. So I think they're a team that will finish 4, 5, 6, somewhere in that range, and like be in contention for a wild card spot. But especially in this division, I just don't see it happening.
I know we already went down this road the last time you were on, but just looking at the Pacific Division, and it's as messy as we expected it to be to start the season. Edmonton, the only team other than San Jose let's talk about that. Scratch where I was going to go. Evander Kane gets the 21-game suspension for, everything that's going on with Evander Kane. At this point, it has to be a situation where the Sharks try to find a way to get out from under that contract. Is he going to actually come back and play for this team at some point later this season?
I can't see a world where that happens. Like I just can't. I mean, it's hockey, so who knows if they just don't care. But I know his teammates don't like him. I know the coaching staff doesn't like him. I know his fans don't like him. No one, everywhere he goes, he's just brutal. I don't think he has any teammates that ever say nice things about him. He's clearly not the best guy in the world. There was stuff about him going around in Buffalo getting in trouble off the ice. The guy just, I don't know what his deal is, because he's an incredible hockey player, what he wants to be, but he seems like he's just got too much off ice stuff. And he's when it comes down to it, I'd never met the guy, but he just doesn't seem like a good dude. I've never heard a heartwarming story about Evander Kane. So I don't see a universe in which Evander Kane is playing hockey for the San Jose Sharks. I don't really know how they get out from. I don't know what the rules are with getting out from that contract, unless they have to buy him out or put him on waivers to terminate the contract. I don't know how that works. I don't know the exact rules, but I just can't see him playing hockey in the NHL, to be honest. But at the same time, if he does end up somewhere playing, it's hockey, so I wouldn't be shocked.
Yeah. Tell you what, let's move our attention to the Eastern Conference, because Tampa Bay is at it again, and we'll talk about that and plenty more to finish things off with Spoke Z here today on Locked On Wild. BetOnline.ag is back, and they are better than ever. A new web interface is available for the start of basketball season, with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline.ag remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. So head to their new updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive that welcome bonus. From basketball, football, baseball, postseason, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline.ag is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts. Final segment of today's episode of Locked On Wild. Again, thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen every day. We move to the Eastern Conference, and shocker, Tampa Bay put another player on long-term IR. Turns out it's the same player that they did before, Nikita Kucherov, and so he will miss the rest of the regular season, or at least a while, which frees up Tampa Bay to put $9.5 million on their books. is this just again the Tampa Bay Lightning taking advantage of the rule book, or what's going? Are the Lightning trying to pull a fast one on everybody again?
I don't know, because I don't really think they can pull a fast one. I think everyone knows at this point. Listen, I don't know. I mean, if you've watched Nikita Kucherov over the last couple of seasons, he is extremely injury prone, and it happens all the time. I don't know if they said it was the same issue as last season, but I mean, it doesn't shock me. And like at this point, when he was out last season, I know the NHL investigated it with a third party to see if that was for real, and it was. So I'm not going to sit here and try to like conjure up that debate again, because it's mind numbing and the people that actually get mad about it, I'm like, oh my god, every team can do it if they like. It's in the rule book, you're allowed to do this. So I don't know, like maybe tell your team to do it. But I mean, I think the injury's clearly legit, so we'll see. The only controversy I'm interested in stirring up again is the Vasilevsky goaltender equipment. I love that, so I'm going to keep that going. It hasn't really helped them so far. He's looked pretty brutal in the first couple games, so maybe he is using the regular equipment again.
He just went back to the normal sized pads, and so that's why he is looking human this season. One team that is not looking human is the Florida Panthers and also the Buffalo Sabres. Both 3-0, just like we expected. The Sabres, juggernauts running away with it to start off the season. How much, if at all, if anything, even a penny, do we buy into what Buffalo's done so far?
Yeah, no, you can't do that. They've played Montreal, who looks like one of the worst hockey teams on the planet right now. I think they just finished their last game, so now they're 0-5, 0-4. Let me check again.
Yikes.
They smashed them. They narrowly beat the Coyotes in a shootout, and they beat Vancouver. We'll find out tomorrow night because they're playing Boston, so we'll see. But I mean, Vancouver's defense is an absolute nightmare, so it doesn't surprise me that they put up a 5 spot on them. I'm just shocked that like the Canucks couldn't beat their goaltenders in that defense more than twice, but it's Vancouver, and I think a lot of their issues stem from that back end. So no, they're not for real, but I think if they are for real, they're going to realize it now and be like, dude, we got to stop winning games because we really want Shane Wright, and this draft is 6. So, or maybe the players are just trying to stick it to Eichel and try to get him to come back. I don't know.
Could be.
But they're not. Like it's not. I don't see this lasting another couple days.
The final one before then we take a look at kind of what's coming up for the weekend. Are the Florida Panthers the team to beat in the Eastern Conference right now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're legit. They are unbelievable. Landeskog just committed another boarding penalty in his first game back. They're real. They're up 3-1 with a minute left on the Avs right now. They look so good. They got 4 really good lines. Sam Reinhart was a huge addition. That back end is continuing to look much stronger finally after all these years. Ekblad looks great. Mackenzie Weegar is still one of the most underrated defensemen in the National Hockey League. He's awesome. That Gustav Forsling's really good. They re-signed him at a good number. And Spencer Knight's looking legit. So, yeah, right now they're kind of the cream of the crop, possibly in the NHL. I mean, they've just looked so good. I mean, they smacked Tampa the other night. They smacked the Islanders. And they narrowly beat Pittsburgh in a shootout, or maybe it was overtime. No, it was overtime. But yeah, they're real good. They got a lot of really good hockey players. And again, Spencer Knight's really coming up big for them.
Let's take a look because, as I mentioned, this has kind of a what's on tap theme to it when we will have you on here throughout the season. So looking ahead to the games for this weekend, I won't ask you what you're watching because the obvious answer is everything. Because you have, I don't know how it's possible, but just like a set of eyes for every single game going on throughout the entirety of the NHL. So, props for that. Huge flex. But some games that I think are of interest to me, Colorado and Tampa Bay on Saturday. And, none of the 4 really, honestly, on Sunday. I mean, Nashville, Minnesota, maybe. But What are some of the big games on the slates that you'll be keeping an eye on this weekend?
I'm curious to see Toronto and Pittsburgh, actually. I want to see because Pittsburgh has just lost all of their centers, like literally every single one.
Yikes.
And then the other one I have my eye on, actually, there's two, Carolina and Columbus. I love Columbus having those rookies playing. Cole Sillinger scored his first NHL goal tonight. Shinnikov almost scored. He's just bombs away on the power play. And Carolina's Carolina. So I think that could be interesting. And then I actually really like the Kings. I really like them. I love that Danault addition. I thought Edler, even though I didn't like that it was the only defenseman they brought in, I thought that would at least stabilize him a little bit, and he's been okay. But I think I had Gabe Velarde poised for a breakout year, and then we can see what St. Louis looks like and if they're for real. But I'm pretty interested in how that one goes. And then I think Seattle's at home versus Vancouver, so that could be fun. That's supposed to be that big rivalry there now with that whatever battle for the Northwest, whatever they want to call it. But I'm excited to see Seattle at home for the first time. That'll be really cool. So those are probably the ones I have my eye on the most.
Could you call that the Northwest Passage? I don't know. That was up there. I'm not a huge geography buff. I also found out I'm not a huge math buff. I'm not a huge buff on really anything, but
not a buff guy.
No. Northwest Passage was up in that area, wasn't it? Question mark?
I'd say so. It is Northwest, and I'm sure there is a passage. So
you could call it that. I mean,
that could work.
Yeah, I'm just throwing out ideas.
I like it.
Believe it. All right. Judd's Buds, new episode this week. So if listeners didn't have a chance to see it, check it out from earlier in the week. Anything else? I know you're on like every Soda Pod podcast there is. Like I go to listen to the newest episodes for them, and I feel like I see you 5 or 6 times a week. So just plug what listeners can keep an eye out for from the Spoked Z content universe.
More Judd's Buds probably. Dived in pretty good so far this week on the prospect games. Damon Hunt had a rough one last night. That was brutal. That poor bastard. Actually, it was his fault. I can't even say that. He decapitated a guy. Literally in a span of 5 minutes, they were still in the game. They're on a power play. He looks like he's about to make a really good play, dances on the blue line with the puck, does a spin move, and instead of shooting, tries a backhand through the middle. They go down, score a shorty.
Ooh.
Minute later, maybe, he takes a penalty with a stupid slash, so that puts them on a 5-on-3. They score. Winnipeg scores twice. He comes out of the box and decapitates some dude, gets tossed. I don't know how he didn't get a suspension. He might still, but then he gets that 5-minute major for hitting a kid who isn't even going to be drafted until next season. Knocks him. It looked like he was knocked out for a second. Gets tossed, and then his team loses 10-2. So he had a rough night. He was like -2. I mean, you're losing 10-2 and 17 penalty minutes. And to rub insult to injury, like Matt Hendricks of the Wild was there to watch Lambos and Hunt because they were playing each other. And Lambos was second star of the game and went off. Meanwhile, Damon Hunt, who's a year older, got tossed and looked terrible and had a really bad night. So RIP to him. No, he'll be back. He's fine.
Shake it
Other than that, I don't know. We recorded one really long Soda Pod episode. We're previewing the divisions. I think most of them have dropped. So I think that's why you were seeing it. I think they were doing it incrementally. So that's why I was there so much. But that's pretty much what I've got going. I'll just be tweeting videos probably and really weird takes.
Tweeting videos and regularly being part of the Locked On Lineup Challenge.
That's me.
We have what, 2? I think there are 2 wins so far. Or no, there's 1 win because there was another tie. Got to find a way to get rid of those ties. Those are just diseased.
Yeah,
not happen.
Yeah, you need some kind of tiebreaker, eh?
But that's the thing is we're tweaking until we find the winning lineup, and then that'll be what we go with the rest of the year. So appreciate the time today, Spoked. Make sure to follow his Twitter account is very easy at SpokedZ. But like I said, he's got eyes on everything. So make sure to give him a follow for the best NHL content you'll find anywhere, and the true king of the state of hockey here with all the wild takes that he brings to the table as well. That is going to wrap it up for today's episode of Locked On Wild. So thank you for tuning in to today's episode, your first listen. Make sure Locked On NHL is your second listen of the day. Make sure to follow us, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere you listen to podcasts. Best bet is just search Locked On Wild and follow us everywhere that we exist so that you stay up to date with all the latest Wild content throughout the course of the week. We have new episodes dropping every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.